At last, class of 2027, this is your moment. We're getting our first look at the current freshmen with the debut of Prep Baseball's rankings, and you best grab pen and paper because you'll want to jot down these next household names. This is Coffee and Curveballs, Cory McCartney and Shooter Hunt. And Shooter, got to know from the offset here, how daunting is this first list and how much goes into making sure that not just Prep Baseball's first crack at the freshman classes out there, but that you get it right and tell everyone who the best in the nation are right now in this age group?
I try not to say it's daunting. It's exciting because these guys are just stepping into high school for the first time. And I think the excitement really stems from just how good these guys are at a young age, which makes it difficult. This is not something thrown together willy-nilly. This is a ton of research, ton of background checking. The fall and summer seasons, a big reason why we don't put this out earlier is the fact that we do want to see these guys on the field at events early on to provide this list, and we don't extend it too far for the reason that, hey, we want to see more in the future. And as we know, this list 250, it will expand over time to 500. So there are at least 250 players in the country right now that we can't wait to see.
A major storyline we're going to talk about as we go along is going to be velocity. How do you gauge current velo and what you think these players are capable of turning into when you put together this list?
I think velocity has been for forever in baseball a hot topic, and even more so now with the fact that we have a player development renaissance going on right now, and it's really sifted into the youth levels. Great facilities, great pitching coach, hitting coaches, the travel teams, they all do such a great job in developing these guys earlier and earlier. So when we see this velo, especially at this young age as freshmen, where guys are going through growth spurts, there's different levels of maturity. We do have to factor in the fact that there is a projection factor. This is not just a right now. This is projecting where will these guys be in 4 years? Where will they be in 6, 7, 8 years? So a lot ties into that. Now, having said that, having those big time fastballs early on and the ability to make those jumps from that spot is important. But what I saw with this class, and especially at the top, when you're looking at a guy like Landon Green from the state of Florida, who's already up into the mid 90s, that's explosive stuff that you cannot ignore.
Well, we're going to get into the top 10 a little bit. And as we have come to expect, it is heavy on those traditional baseball hotbeds, Texas, California, the southern states. It all gets started with junior Future Games alum Lash Henderson out of Prestonwood Christian Academy.
Yeah, but not many baseball players look like that at this young age. 6'3", 6'4", square shoulders. It's an explosive right-handed swing. And the fact that he has a high ceiling that he's still hoping to reach and approach towards over the next 4 years in that Dallas area is what's so exciting about him at number one. And when putting this list together, and Chase Fuller, they're basically interchangeable right now. But you have a guy like that who we expect to have residency in this top 10 because there's some unteachable characteristics for him. And as long as he continues to develop, and it's a big reason why we have so many big four states, we're talking California, Florida, Georgia, Texas, those guys develop kind of at a quicker rate. And statistically speaking, there's more big leaguers that come out of these areas, especially California, when looking at it towards that. But Lash Henderson, square shouldered, don't overthink it. That guy's an athlete. It's an explosive bat. There's power, real power potential, and he looks the part.
A lot of times we talk about athletic bloodlines, and Lash does have them, just of a different kind. His dad, Michael, was a Big 12 football official, and he just worked the Big 12 championship game between Oklahoma State and Texas. And you may want to keep your eye out for that name as the bowl season rolls along. He's followed by Florida outfielder Chase Fuller, who you mentioned, one of the few players in this class who is committed. He did so for Florida State back in January as an 8th grader. Fuller is one of 3 Florida players in the top 5, 4 in the top 10. There's also number 4, Landon Green, a right-hander out of A3 Academy. Number 5, Rylan McMahon, a Florida commit and lefty from Clay. And 10th ranked Brian Ravello, LSU commit. Green, by the way, up to 94. McMahon's already into the 90s as we talk velo. The Sunshine State shooter is, to no surprise, well represented in the top of this class.
No, and it's so nice. I'm a cold weather state guy, so it must be so nice to be able to play year round. But what makes the Florida guys so special and something that's easy for us to bet on them and their talent is the fact that they don't take it for granted. They can play year round. They take advantage of that. So that means that their development curve can come a little bit quicker. They get on the field. They get more at bats. When you're looking at a guy like Chase Fuller, he's going to see premium arms game after game. So that high ceiling gives him a chance to approach it quicker than some guys from cold weather states. We talk about Brian Ravello, who's a right-handed hitting outfielder from the Miami area. He's going to be facing big time arms nonstop. So getting those experience, getting those reps against those high level arms allows him to progress at a quicker pace. But you also shouted out Rylan McMahon, who is a dynamite lefty. I think he's got a chance to really explode up this list over time as well.
We only go out west in the top 10 once, and that's third Jared Grininger, first baseman and lefty out of Huntington Beach. TCU commit from back in February. What is it enticing to you about his two-way capabilities?
Well, I mean, right off the bat, you look at the Grininger family, who's got so many talented players. His brother's in a junior class there in Huntington Beach, committed to Mississippi State, catcher behind the plate. Jared's younger for this class, which is something that was intriguing going through the list. There's a lot of older players, especially coming out of California. Jared's younger, but he can really swing it. Hops on the mound. It's up in the upper 80s. It looks the part there. But what you got to love about a kid coming out of the California, that program, Huntington Beach, produces guys, not just college dudes, professional guys who scouts are going out there to look at, and they're going to get a good look at Jared Grininger for the next 4 years. Because I mean, every year that Oiler program's bringing out draft prospects. But I love the way he competes, and I think he's only going to get better, especially he's a little brother. You know, he's going to have that chip on his shoulder.
Well, the South has something to say, and it is evident in the top 10. Georgia's Kaden Dawson, two-way player from Power Blessed Trinity, is at 6. A pair of lefty Connors from the Carolinas, Connor Wells at 8, Connor Salerno at 9th. What do you like about them?
Yeah, you talked about Dawson, who I think is going to absolutely mash there at Blessed Trinity. Again, another big-time program where you expect those guys to continue to make that progress. They have upperclassmen who are always pushing them. But the state of South Carolina did get a nice influx there from Connor Salerno, who's a North Carolina product. He's now headed down to Legion Collegiate, which should be stacked for the next 4 years. But when you're looking at a 6'3" lefty, the arms really work on both Wells and Salerno. They're both kind of interchangeable right now as well. Explodes out of the hand. I think they can just keep climbing up there. And again, left-handers, they just don't grow on trees. You know, you have a ton of value in the upside of those guys as potential starters. And I mean, not just those two, but Griffin McCain, another Legion Collegiate lefty who's in the top 25. But that was something we really highlighted throughout this process going through, was the fact that there were so many southpaws in this class who are 6'3", 6'4", loose arms, easy movers. So there's some dynamic athleticism. So huge upside for those guys.
Also in that top 10 is Derek Yormack, a utility player and right-hander from New York who's committed to Duke. He kind of segues into another topic, which is the cold weather states. As you are painfully aware, and as you mentioned, coming out of New Jersey, it can be tough to get on the radar this early. Yormack's done that without a doubt. So is Pennsylvania, where the Key State has 12 in the top 50, headlined by catcher Jacob Carrasco, who was flashing a pop time into the low 1.9s at the junior feature games.
Yeah, Carrasco is outstanding. You talk about those cold weather guys. What I was impressed with each of these states that were about to embark on some of these guys in the cold weather stage, just how advanced they were, especially swing wise. And always we're looking for those good movement patterns. You want to find athletes, that aptitude, aggressiveness coming out of these states. And that's what we found. Graham Keene, another dynamic athlete. I don't want to call him a Benny Montgomery type, but it's a 6'4" frame, loose athleticism. There's some explosiveness in the barrel. You talked about Carrasco, can really do it behind the dish. I love the way that the swing works. Josh Burkholder, another big one. He's a West Virginia commit, big time athlete. Brady Guzzi is one that keep an eye on. Two-way potential, really sweet left-handed stroke, and he can hop on the bump and do it there. Devontae Hardison. I mean, I think there are 12 guys from the Keystone State that made this list, and each one kept getting better. Going through it with Nathan Ocker in Pennsylvania, it was, hey, this might be the best class I've seen from Pennsylvania since coming on. The deepest, tons of athleticism. There's some really big names, and there's some arms in the back end that are 6'3", 6'4", and you always look for those Pennsylvania guys who make huge jumps.
Along with Pennsylvania, let's get into a couple more states with classes as you're following. Alabama and Missouri. Alabama's got an exciting group. Jamarcus Smith, who we've already talked about, Velo. This kid is into the 90s already headlining this group.
Yeah, Jamarcus was at the JFGs last year, had to sprint down to the other side because get word from David Sharp and Austin Sharp, there are directors in the Deep South. Jamarcus Smith's on the bump going 88th and 91 with a wipeout slider. And you just don't see that. And what I loved about Jamarcus Smith coming out of those games was he's not hopping on the mound and just happy to be there. He was there to embarrass. He was there to get those swings and misses. He was there to win. So that winner's edge, and I think over time, if he continues to develop, it's not super polished yet, but it's explosive, unteachable arm talent right now. I think he's got huge upside, but he wasn't alone. You got guys like Andrew Bennett, who was on that same JFG team. He's 6'3", 6'4", coming from over the top. Some explosiveness out of the hand. JB Upton's a nice one that we got to see this fall, who's a good one to follow. And then Brody Wilson gives you another 6'3" righty who's only going to get better. I'm very excited to see this Alabama crew, and I know I'm going to be having to make my way down there to the South pretty soon to check these guys out.
So Jamarcus Smith is also a football player, and we talk about two-sport guys. Missouri, they've got Cole Chambers. This group starts with him. He has two-sport capabilities, but shooter's not that typical thing that we think about when we think about a two-sport athlete.
No, this guy's apparently a dynamite goalie on the pitch. And apparently he has a chance to be a national team guy, pro clubs coming in. So we'll see if we ever get a chance to see him at the future levels baseball wise, because the beautiful game might be calling his name in the future. But excellent athlete. He leads the way there in Missouri, but he's not alone. I love the upside and potential for right-hander Brandon Ott. One of my favorite arms going through this list. I think it really works. I think he can make some huge strides over the next year or two. Hopefully in 2 years, we're watching him at the future games. But all around, Luke McAtee, Max McCartney, there's some guys who can really swing it in this group. And when you're looking for that Midwest and the heart of America, Missouri seems to keep churning out some big time prospects.
Well, this is just the beginning for these 2027s, and we'll see how they follow up these initial places in the national pecking order. We've always got you covered here on Coffee and Curveballs, so stick around. We'll have so much more coming for you. Until next time, I'm Cory McCartney, that's Shooter Hunt, and we'll see you at the Diamond.